Well, hello, I'm Emma from English. I'm super excited to share this video with you today. I want to challenge your thinking about fluency. What does it mean to be fluent in English? And are you actually more fluent than you think? Before we get started, I just want to thank the sponsor of today's lesson, Skillshare. Now, I mentioned Skillshare a few weeks ago in this lesson here. They're an online learning platform with lots of free classes, but through their premium membership, you can access thousands of amazing classes taught by expert teachers across so many different areas. It's mind-blowing, really, just how many different courses there are. I've taken 3 classes already. I took one in productivity because I need as much help as I can get in that area. But I'm completely hooked on baking. I've never baked my own bread before, but I've taken 2 classes about bread making on Skillshare, and I'm getting pretty good at it now. I learned so much about the baking process, and it's actually easier than you think. Now, taking a course relating to your interest in English is an awesome way to build your fluency around topics that you love. And Skillshare is the perfect place to do that. It's super affordable. A premium membership will cost you as little as $10 a month on their annual plan. But Skillshare have given us a special deal today. The first 500 English viewers who sign up with a credit card using the link in the description will get 2 whole months of premium access to all their courses. It's unlimited. You can take as many classes as you want. We're so grateful to Skillshare for offering this deal and giving you yet another way to practice your English skills. So quickly, get down there and grab that link before someone else does. All right, back to the lesson. Today, I've got 3 ways to increase your English fluency. But first, and this is a very important question, what does fluency mean to you? Now, it's tricky because if I asked 5 of you, I'm sure I'd hear 5 completely different answers. What does it mean to be fluent in English? What do you think? I want you to write me a comment below. Tell me your opinion about this question. For some people, fluency is being able to have a normal conversation with a native speaker, small talk, general topics like work, where you're from, your family, that kind of thing. But for others, fluency relates to tests and exams, a certain level that you need to achieve before you can enter a university or apply for a visa. And that's okay too. But it's really important that you answer this question. When you say, I want to be fluent in English, what do you actually want to be able to do? Really think about your answer. I'm pushing you to do this. I want you to join in on this discussion. Be part of the conversation today here, my friend. Don't just watch. I want you to participate. So for me, fluency is a mix of ability, reading, writing, listening, speaking skills, and confidence. Confidence to stay in an English conversation. To me, fluency doesn't mean that you're an advanced English user. It could, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. In my opinion, someone who's fluent in English can maintain a conversation and feel reasonably relaxed while they're doing it. Their tone and their pace is comfortable. They don't hesitate too often. They should be able to speak words and also express their feelings through their facial expression. And importantly, they should be able to talk themselves around their mistakes, correct themselves if they need to. The more confident that someone is speaking English, the more relaxed they are, right? They're comfortable in the language, even if it's not 100% perfect. So, With my definition of fluency, someone who is an intermediate level student could be fluent in English, because fluency is about having the skills that you need to communicate comfortably and effectively, but not perfectly. So I wonder if our ideas of fluency are slightly different. You might completely disagree with me, and that's okay. As long as you know what English fluency means to you. Okay, we've all agreed that your own definition of fluency is completely acceptable here. And now that you know that definition, it's time for us to talk about some ways that you can increase your fluency. Firstly, I want you to worry less about accuracy. Now, for some of you, this might not be such a new idea. Maybe you don't worry too much about your mistakes, and that's perfect. But stay with me because I've got some other strategies coming up later in the lesson. But for most of you, this idea might seem a little crazy, especially if you've studied English at school or at a university. Everything that we are taught there is about getting it right. And if it's not right, it's wrong. You have to prove your ability by passing an exam. Well, life is nothing like an exam. So I want you to forget all of that when you're thinking about fluency. As your teacher, helping you to become more confident as an English speaker, you need to change the way that you think about accuracy when you're speaking in English. Now, I'm not talking about writing in English here, I'm talking about speaking. You know that there are many different ways to say the same thing, right? And if you make a mistake when you're speaking, you just need to learn how to loop yourself around in that conversation and fix it. You don't need to feel worried or ashamed. It happens to me, to native speakers all the time too. All you need to do is feel confident that you can fix the mistakes that you make. If you're too focused on the mistakes that you're making and you're constantly questioning yourself in your head during your conversation, this is going to hold you back. Because if you're too afraid or you're too worried to even start speaking, how are you supposed to get any practice, right? So try to focus less on the mistakes that you're making and focus more on communicating your message clearly. This is going to help you to relax and focus on the positives of your conversation. Yes, I am talking about your mindset here. I'm talking about changing the way that you think about yourself. Now, that is easier to say than it is to do, I know. But the reason why I want you to shift your mindset on accuracy is because you need to start exposing yourself to English in real situations, right? So that you can get comfortable being flexible with the language. It's what native speakers do all the time, right? We make up words to express our ideas. We bend and we twist the tenses a little. If we make a mistake, but it doesn't really affect the meaning of our sentence, well, we might not bother to fix it. Who cares when you're speaking to, friends and family in particular? So don't get too caught up on accuracy. Now, the next thing I want you to think about is focus on the English that you need to use. Now, there's two different ways to think about this. The first way is to think really broadly about English as a language. The reality of English, or any language, is that there are thousands and thousands of words, yet only a percentage of those are used frequently in daily conversation. And I'm talking about native English speakers here, not English learners. An average native English speaker actively uses around 10 to 12% of English words. That's their active vocabulary, words that they use to express themselves when they write and they speak. Now, this is the full vocabulary that they use out in the world, that satisfies their need to communicate in every part of their life. Now, this same average native speaker keeps about 23 to 24% of English words in their passive vocabulary, which means that, they're words that they read and they listen to and they understand, but they don't really use them themselves. There is a percentage of English words that you need to know and understand. And I invite you to focus on more specific and useful parts of English rather than feeling completely overwhelmed by this really huge and complicated language. To put it simply, if you know 10% of English words, you'll be as good as a native English speaker. So break that down for yourself, Focus on the first 1,000 words, then move on to the next 3,000, 5,000. I've shared some really useful links about this in the description box below. So if you're interested in getting word lists and the most common uses of words, grab the links in the description. Now, the second way to think about this is to think more specifically about how you use English. So become fluent in that particular area of English. Be an English expert in the space that you need to use it. So if you're a freelance graphic designer or a web developer and you want to work with international clients, you need to become fluent in that area, in your area of expertise. What are the conversations that you're going to have with those clients? What topics do you need to discuss? What words do you need to express your ideas? Now, this is exactly the English that you need to focus on. And this translates directly into your interests and your hobbies as well. If you're passionate about photography or growing vegetables or flying drones, you want to be able to talk about those things in English too, right? You want to meet other English speakers who are also interested in those things. So focus on the vocabulary and the expressions that you need to do this. You need to find your people, others who are as passionate as you are. You need to join online groups and communities, or even meet up in person if you can. Grab the Skillshare trial that I mentioned at the start of this lesson. Just take all of the courses in photography, learn as much as you can about the things that you love. You'll be able to listen to native speakers talking about the topic. You'll learn new words and expressions and ways of talking about your interests, right? You need to expose yourself to that particular type of English. Now, the fastest way to increase your fluency is undoubtedly to live in an English-speaking country where you're surrounded by it, where you can immerse yourself. But if you haven't got that opportunity to do that, well, the next best thing is to surround yourself with English through courses, through programs, through communities. Now, if you really want to improve your fluency in a particular area, then find a tutor to work with you and specifically ask them to practice role plays. Now, a role play is when you pretend that you're in a particular situation. It's like you're acting. You pretend that you're doing something. You're speaking the English that you would need to use in that situation. Now, my fiancé Shah did this brilliantly when we were studying in Spain. All he really wanted to be able to do in Spanish was speak to the butchers at the markets about the jamón. The regions, the pigs, what they were fed, what problems the farmers faced, that kind of thing. He needed to know how to talk about very specific topics. So he asked his tutor to role play with him. She had to pretend that she was the butcher and have conversations with him about pigs. And they practiced again and again and again. His tutor was wonderful, but I'm sure she thought he was crazy. But after 6 weeks of practicing, Shah went from being basically a beginner to being fluent in butcher Spanish, which is completely hilarious. But seriously, thinking about how this strategy could supercharge your English in a particular area could be a really useful tool for you. I mean, you can apply this to any area. If you work at a hotel and you need to be able to speak to customers who are staying at the hotel in English, you really need to be fluent in a few very specific things. You need to be fluent in giving good directions. You need to be fluent in offering assistance. You need to be fluent in helping them to pay their bill, that kind of thing. You don't need to know a whole lot of vocabulary about economics and finance and farming. It's absolutely possible to be fluent in the English that you need. and reasonably quickly too, if you can focus on the English that you need to be fluent in. And that is what you should be working towards, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that shifting the way that you think about fluency can make it seem more achievable, right? Now I want you to tell me in the comments, what do you want to be English fluent in? What specific areas? I might be able to make some extra vocabulary lessons to help, particularly if lots of people are asking around those topics. I really hope that this lesson was helpful for you. I hope that you kept your mind open and you stayed curious through the lesson, allowing yourself to think of some of these different ideas, even if they sound a little different. And I really encourage you to keep these different ideas in mind. If you want to increase your fluency in English or in any language, then you need to think specifically about what you need and take action. Start doing it. I mean, you could start with some of my lessons, right? If you want to be fluent talking about relationships in English, watch this lesson. If you want to be able to talk about money, go there. What you do next is up to you, right? But I hope to see you in one of those lessons.